Okay. All right. Good morning. And for those on Zoom and members of the public present, welcome to this meeting of the Development Committee of NNDC for the 18th of November 2021. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich and I'm chairing the meeting this morning. For those who haven't attended previously, members are in front of me, officers are either side of me. I'm going to ask officers to introduce themselves, starting with...
Good morning, my name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Management and Major Projects Manager.
Matt Stemfrich, Democratic Services.
Morning, Chairman, members of the public. My name is Philip Rosen. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning at North Norfolk.
Morning, I'm Martin Fulcher, Director of Place and Climate Change.
Morning, everybody. My name is Noel Doran. I'm a solicitor, legal advisor to the committee this morning.
Thank you. Just usual housekeeping. Mobiles off or silent, please. No fire alarms are planned. If sirens do go, where the exits are, I've been here many times before. We may have a coffee break at 11. I would hope we're not still going strong at that point, but we shall see. And if we do take a break, I remind members of the public not to try and speak to committee members during that break. Okay. Item 2 then, apologies for absence, Matt.
Yeah, we have apologies from Councillors Clive Stockton, Councillor Pauline Grove-Jones and Councillor Angie Fitch-Tillett. I think we may have a few more absences, but they haven't given apologies. Yep, we have Councillor John Toy and Councillor John Rest.
Okay, item 4 then, minutes of the meeting of the 21st of October. Any comments on any aspect of those minutes, or are we happy to agree them as a true record? Thank you. I shall sign them as a true record. Item 5, I have no items of urgent business notified to me. Have we had any?
No, none received.
And no objections, etc. under item 5B. The order of business will clearly be as is on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No declarations of interest. In which case we move to the main business of the day. Item 8, application Hindringham, reference PF/20/1345, construction of 11 dwellings, associated parking, landscape and infrastructure south of Wells Road, Hindringham. Could I ask Jeff to present on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this application last came before you at committee on the 29th of July, where it's resolved primarily for 2 reasons. Those were to do with concerns about foul drainage in the area, and also observations about the layout of the site. So there was a request to review the layout to relieve some of the concerns about the density and layout. So in terms of the plans, if Matt can just sort of focus on the layout plan. So if we start looking at the layout changes that have happened since the last report to committee. So the big change is a reduction from 12 dwellings to 11 dwellings. So if we start at the sort of top of the site onto Wells Road, there are 4 3-bed 2-storey houses, and these are the market dwellings that would help enable the project to happen. So as we cycle round to the right of the site, there are 4 dwellings grouped together. These can comprise 2-bed bungalows and 1-bed bungalows. Then at the left-hand side of the site, there's a semi-detached pair of 3-bed 2-storey properties, and the detached unit is a two-bedroom bungalow. So that's the revised layout. So the reduction in numbers has actually helped provide additional space for habitat planting areas. So you can just see at the bottom of the revised plan, there's a sort of area of planting, and there's an area of planting just to the south of the market dwellings. I don't know if Matt, you can just point your mouse there. So we've got one area there, another area to the north of that, and then the habitat planting along the frontage. So there was, as you remember from the July meeting, there was a lot of discussion during the processing of the application about retaining as much of that existing hedge as possible. So those are the key changes. So officers have set out their views on these amendments. We consider them acceptable and in broad compliance with development plan policies. So we're content with the layout changes as proposed. Now, I think the biggest area of concern members had last time was about foul sewage and the impact of development on foul sewage. And you asked us to go away and have a look at this, and just to confirm that the issues that were raised last time, actually, are they genuine issues that we really need to take forward? So we've been engaged with Anglia Water, who have looked again at the site. They've undertaken further work, including a CCTV assessment. So they've looked at the network near to the site. Anglia Water have confirmed that the CCTV assessment showed that the sewer network to be in good working order. Now, there were some manhole chambers with tree roots in, however, they've been cleared and they did not impact the flow. The pumping station was also confirmed to be in good working order. Now, we do have representatives from Anglia Water, Hannah Wilson, and I think Rob Morris also, they have joined the call. So if members do have particular questions about the foul drainage network issues that were raised last time, that they're here to answer any particular questions. Of course, whilst it was and it still is a sensitive issue within the village, and the parish council do retain their objection to this proposal, it's obviously important not to conflate existing drainage problems with what we need to do as a planning committee in determining this application. So we just need to sort of separate those two issues out. Obviously, it's important to understand the impact of this development on the foul drainage network, but it would be considered unreasonable to expect Broadland Housing to resolve existing problems as part of their proposal. So I say in this case, Anglia Water have given a very clear steer that there is capacity to accommodate the proposed developments. So in the determination of the application, officer advice to committee is that there is no defensible grounds to refuse the application in relation to concerns about foul drainage. Now, since the report was published, I have had one additional comment come in from a member of the public. They've raised a question about could the market dwellings be subject to a covenant restricting it for local sale. I think there was concerns that other properties, open market properties on schemes have come into second home or holiday lets, and that sort of reduced the availability of those market units for people locally. That's not within our recommendation to committee, where our recommendation is as set out, but yeah, we've noted the concerns, but it's not something that we can take forward under current policy. So in terms of the conclusions, I've set out the planning balance across pages 7 and 8 of the updated report to you. In our view, the delivery of affordable housing, which meets an unmet local need, is in the wider public interest and is a corporate priority, attracting substantial weight in favour. As such, on balance, officers consider that the material planning considerations in favour of this proposal outweigh the departure from the development plan. Recommendation is therefore one of approval as set out across pages 8 and 9 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we move to public speakers. Do we have a parish council representative?
No, we don't.
Thank you. Do we have any opposing speakers?
No.
No. Understand I have Mr. Mumford Smith to speak in favour. If you could come to the microphone at the end, please. You'll have three minutes, which Matt will be timing. Thank you.
Good morning. When Strategic Housing requested we consider a local needs scheme in Hindringham, this infill plot seemed ideal. To begin with, the architect undertook a study of the village before preparing the initial design, whose arrangement has needed to change little since. Community consultation was held in the village hall, where residents who attended seemed pleasantly surprised by the design and how it avoids overlooking neighbours. Developing in North Norfolk can be technically challenging, and it then took time to work through the various behind the scenes and below ground issues. Highways requested safety improvements to the junction of Wells Road and the street. Mains electricity was monitored over a winter. An archaeological investigation was undertaken. Anglian Water advised the foul sewer has capacity, in fact, ample capacity for foul sewage from the development. Surface water drainage will be provided to on-site soakaways. An update was posted to households in the parish, which resulted in one request from a new neighbour to rotate plot 1 that has been taken on board. Since committee deferral, the association has met with a representative from the planning department and Anglia Water, who explained the foul sewer has been surveyed and found to be in a relatively good condition. Tree roots are being cleared from chambers. Following last committee, I also agreed to look into reports of newts in the area. The ecologist has investigated further and advises smooth and common newts are protected from sale and barter, but not development. Unfortunately, opposition has drawn attention away from the benefits of the development, as well as providing high quality and desperately needed affordable homes for local people. It is an opportunity for Broadland Housing Association to progress its path to net zero carbon. Carbon audits are now undertaken to reduce embodied carbon from construction material supply, manufacture and transportation. For example, timber frame compared to blockwork saves 18 years of operational energy. Renewable energy from air source heat pumps and photovoltaic panels will reduce operational energy still further. Flints and sand for the association's recent nearby development in Binham were sourced from local quarries. No construction waste goes to landfill. So in summary, I asked members to accept Anglian Water's advice that the foul sewer has ample capacity to serve the development, which will result in a negligible increase in flows, and approve this application to allow Broadland Housing Association to continue its work delivering high quality, low carbon homes so desperately needed by local people. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could return to your seat. And we now move to the local member, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'm grateful to Broadland Housing for the amendments they've made to the application. But I still have to take issue with the sewage going into Stiff Key. Even in September, October, it was happening. The fact that Anglian Water have carried out CCT inspections and found it no blockages, for me, that makes the problem worse. If there are no blockages and we're still getting these issues going into the Stiff Key, I find that morally indefensible. I know tankers have been sent down on site. I was at the parish council meeting on Tuesday where the owner of the land was present when a tanker was there, and they jet washed back up towards the village, but can get no further than 300 meters. I also understand that the local flood authority have the responsibility for runoff, but the problem here is foul sewage going into ditches and going into Stiff Key, and we know that we've got problems with this all over the county and outflows. And until those, I don't personally trust the authority to do the work post the application being approved. I want to see this resolved before. I know that might be it's not a conflation in my mind, Jeff. I know it might be in yours. So I will ask for, I think what we should be doing is having a site visit for the committee to go and look at the situation in situ. Thank you. And I will be voting against.
Thank you. Noel, can I ask you to give the legal position as regards to drainage matters?
Thank you, Chair. Jeff has already covered the point. An individual planning application shouldn't be used to address an existing problem. It's a material consideration, but effectively a new development shouldn't make matters worse. It can be used to contribute towards improving the situation, for example, by reducing the input into a sewage system. That's a possibility, but not a requirement. It simply must not make matters worse. It should not be used to address an existing problem, the responsibility for that lies elsewhere. You will have seen in the report reference to the possibility of an appeal and a costs award being explored. If the application were to be refused for these reasons, it would be necessary to produce evidence going against the advice of the statutory consultee. Now, that is not impossible, but it does present difficulties, and it does carry with it certainly a credible risk of a cost application being made for that reason on the grounds of unreasonable behaviour.
I think before we move into debate, we bring in Anglian Water. If I, it's Hannah, hasn't it? If I could ask Hannah to explain the position as regards not just this particular site and the nature of the issues you found and resolved with this foul drainage, but to the wider issues, including the concerns over water entering the Stookie.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Wilson, Planning Manager for Anglian Water. So what we've done, as Jeff's explained, we've CCTV'd part of the network, removed some tree roots, and we've found that the network is working efficiently and effectively as it should. We also lifted some manhole covers and did some kind of manhole inspections throughout the parish. And again, we found no issues within the network. We've looked back at our records of any reported flooding, and we haven't got any that we haven't had any that have been reported to us. That doesn't mean flooding doesn't exist. We're not suggesting that at all. It's just that on our reporting records, we don't have any. Now, our reporting records, when we look at a flooding incident, we classify what that cause of flooding was. So it could be blockages, which we then have to rectify and remove. It could be tree roots, a bit like what we did already in the parish, is that we identify them and then we remove them. Or it could be, so they're all maintenance and operational issues, or it could be due to the surface water getting into a foul-only network in storm events, or if a river overtops, it could all go into our foul network, which isn't designed to accommodate surface water. And that is an extreme weather event or a storm event. And then we look at incidents which are caused by capacity related restraints. And in this network, we ran our model. We plugged in, if you like, the additional foul flows coming from the new development site, and there is capacity within the network to accept those additional flows without mitigation required. Now, the flooding, you've kindly provided us evidence and the parish council have liaised with us and kindly provided us some pictures. And the flooding that we've seen from those evidence is that it's surface water flooding. So it's coming overland flooding. It could be from unknown connections from people's dwellings. So their roof, the rainwater from their roof is going directly into a foul, for example. And that is not a capacity related issue. That surface water shouldn't be there in the first instance. It should be dealt with at source and not be directed into the foul network. So it is not an issue of capacity. It is an issue of surface water, and that issue spans a number of organisations, including, as you've already mentioned, the lead local flood authority. So from an Anglian Water point of view, there is capacity to accommodate the foul flows from this development site.
Thank you. So in your view, there is full capacity for this development, which would not adversely impact on the longer standing matters.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, members, I'm conscious that we have a proposal from Councillor Kershaw to defer for a site visit. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Thank you. Okay, we'll need to debate that first. I personally am not convinced that we'll gain any further insight. Could I ask Officer Rowson just to comment on that, please?
Chairman, I think before members debate, it would be useful to hear from the proposer or seconder as to exactly what the site visit would be focused on, what would be the main purpose of visiting the site to observe the concerns that are raised through the proposer and seconder's requirement for this visit.
Councillor Kershaw.
Certainly. I have visited the site on several occasions when there hasn't been heavy rain and storm, and have seen the effluent coming out of the quite a few of the tanks into the river. We've got videos of the same, and it's, yes, when there is heavy rain, you do see flooding, but when I've been down there, I've seen effluent going in when there's been no surface water in the fields. And I think the layout of it, I have not seen any proof that from pumping station over to Binham has been cleared. I can't see how people made plumbing into the mains, but this is the problem that concerns the parish and I, is whatever the reason, foul and human waste going into the Stiff Key, which is Chalk River, when there aren't particularly stormy weathers, or when it's not in winter. And I think it's a very unusual site with the drain. I think it would benefit members visiting and talking to the parish council, and if necessary, looking at the videos of the outflows. I just think, we're in danger here of polluting a chalk stream, which is one of the few chalk streams we have in North Norfolk. And I think it would be remiss of us not to look at this before we proceed endangering the river.
Thank you. Could I have a comment from Jeff as to how that issue relates to the decisions on this site?
I think we all understand the concerns that are being raised about the existing network. I don't think that's in dispute, that there's concern about what's happening locally. But from a planning authority perspective, we've got to make a decision on this planning application. So we have to separate out those existing issues, because we can't, as Nola said, we can't be asking this developer to resolve existing problems in the network. That's a matter for Anglian Water, the Flood Authority, and all those people that are engaged in resolving those existing issues, not only in Hindringham, there's other places across the district where we've seen this happening as well. But we need to focus our mind on what our responsibility is as a local planning authority. And what I wouldn't want the committee to do is to commit to a decision that then sets us up for a cost challenge, because that's not going to be helpful for anybody in terms of getting this affordable housing built. And at the end of the day, affordable housing is a corporate priority, along with protecting the environment. So the two are central and key tenets of this council's sort of priorities. But we haven't got the evidence before us now to say that this scheme is having an adverse impact on the environment through foul network flooding. We don't have the evidence. So if that concern was to be taken forward, we'd have to see and provide evidence, because we'd have to back up any position that we took on that point. So my advice is to consider this application as it is. You've had clear advice from your statutory consultee that there is capacity, and we have those separate discussions outside of this application process about those local issues in Hindringham. And that's not to say that we can necessarily resolve them, because the actions that Anglian Water and the Flood Authority take are dependent on the scale of the harm that's being caused by that flooding event. So there's quite a number of financial constraints on those bodies. They don't have a bottomless pit of money, and they have to prioritise the work that they do. So it depends how the issues at Hindringham fit within sort of wider issues in the district. But let's not sort of merge these two issues together, is my advice. Let's take a view on this application. We've got the advice that we can approve this application, and let's take those other issues offline and resolve them through other means, not via the planning authority route. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Andrew, did you want to add anything to Gershaw's comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. We know that there is tension, and it's not for this committee to get involved in it, nationally, with extreme rainfall events topping out sewers. My concern originally was that we get the capacity of the sewers right, and that we're not adjusting the sewers once people have moved into the site, if it gets consent and it goes ahead and is developed. Because I think we owe that to the residents of the site, and also to the views expressed by the parish council, which I have to say I am disappointed that we don't see a representative from parish council here today. I think other members at this committee have commented on previous applications that we've dealt with where there's been no representation from the parish council. That is really regrettable. But of itself shouldn't be a reason, obviously, not to make the right decision. That wouldn't be right. I just wanted to draw attention to the recommendation, paragraph 3 on page 46. This is the informative note. That worries me slightly. Informative note seems to suggest it puts it in the category of the highway code in road traffic terms. It's more honoured in the breach than the observance, so to speak. So I just want to ask Hannah Wilson if she could enlighten us, Anna, if you will, please, as to exactly how this would work. It's probably not possible to be sort of put into a condition in the Section 106 agreement. Maybe Officer Olsen could help us on that. But if you'd like to just explain how this will work in practice, this informative note in terms of ongoing maintenance.
Before we do that, Councillor, you are referring to the original report. The proposal currently before us, assuming we don't move to defer, does not include that clause.
I'd like somebody to explain why
page 8 and page 9.
Why it doesn't include it.
Okay, I'll just pick it up from the local planning authority perspective. That note was drafted at a time before we deferred to do further investigation into the foul network issue. So that was because we were aware at the time in July of concerns about foul network concerns. We included that note, so there could be discussion between the relevant parties. At that stage, we were happy to recommend approval as we are today, but since that time, we've had clarity over the issues that were of concern to committee. So there's no need for that note now because we have the CCTV survey carried out by Anglia Water, which has confirmed the position we had previously.
Could I just remind members, the substantive recommendation is on page 8 and page 9 of your papers. That is what we're dealing with today. All right, we are still currently debating whether to defer for a site visit. Councillor Lloyd, his hand up earlier.
I was just going to comment in general on the application, not the site visit, actually.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thinking on site visits, I'm not generally in favour of them because of the cost, the time, the delay, and the knock-on effect that causes down the chain. It was only last night at full council that we were talking about sewage and effluent and all the other nasty things that happen, and that has happened on occasions on or near this site. I think it would have been helpful, first off, if some of the video, although it might be a bit grisly looking at, could have been displayed here for this site from Anglia Water, for the simple reason is the sewage concerns, whether we go ahead today or not, are still not going to rest easy with very, very many members of this committee. It is a concern. I've raised it myself, my colleagues raised it, and we're not being political, we're being sensible here. I actually think, looking at it now, that I think a site visit with Anglia Water present would be a very good thing. This is a small site. I understand, I'm not talking about the proposal at this stage, that it's something that is needed with the local plans, etc., for villages to have local housing, but we've got to get it right. And the water problems do concern me greatly. And I am come now to the situation where I think I would support in this occasion a site visit, because I want to see the houses built here. I do. And I'm passionate about it. But we've got to get it right. And we have in the past made recommendations and points of constructive criticism to Anglia Water. And I think they should be present with us on one site visit. Now, it's an exception to my thoughts, but it's the care, the location, the size of the village, size of the proposal. I think a site visit would be most recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Withington.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's anybody here who is probably against the idea of the affordable housing moving forward. And I think we're all passionate about that. And it's obviously in our corporate plan. For me, the issue here, and I am trying to separate it, but there seems to be a bit of a muddying of the waters in the middle, shall we say, in that if we're being sort of told that there is actual events going on when we don't have masses of rainwater coming down, surface water, we are still getting the effluent discharge. So for my mind, part of this site visit should be that opportunity to establish that fact. We haven't been given that evidence, as so to speak, and it would appear that Anglian Water don't have that evidence, in that they don't seem to have evidence of those flooding events or those out of heavy storm weather events as well. And I think that needs establishing. I think it would be wrong on our part to make a decision when we can't for definite say that that is not happening. And I wouldn't be happy to agree to something that that I'm not confident that has been fully explored.
Thank you. Could I just ask Hannah to comment on the number of known events in Hindringham over the last 12 months?
So we have, yeah, absolutely, good question. We have no kind of records of recorded flooding events. Now, when I say recorded flooding events, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there haven't been flooding events, incidents happened, but we only know about them if they are recorded to us through the correct channel. So we need every single resident to ring us up and record these flooding events at that time. And then we would go and investigate. So what I would propose to do is absolutely we can continue this conversation around the existing issues. That's absolutely, we're committed to doing that with you. And we can come in and also speak to elected members and give you an overview of what we as Anglian Water do in general, and the principles of what we do and how we do it in terms of the planning process. And then we can do site visits with you, etc. But just to be clear, if there were flooding events due to capacity within the settlement, we would expect to be called to those events. Now, where we have had that evidence shown to us recently, it's within the fields and it is surface water. And because of the colour that's coming out of the network. And then I think also an outfall has been mentioned. We do not have any outfalls in that position in our network along there. So again, it may be that it could be a highways outfall or another authority's outfall that you're seeing spillage from. So we are committed to continuing the conversation regarding existing issues with you, absolutely, and we can do that.
Thank you. I find that most useful. Anybody else wishes to speak? Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see the advantage if someone wants a site visit. The only problem is that is literally what it is. At that time, on that day, you will make a site visit. That is a picture that you will see then. Now, I'm not guessing, but if you went today at this time, I doubt if you'll see any flooding. I doubt if you'd see any evidence of anything. And it's a bit of a shame because
you've got to, if you're going to take the site visit, you only have one opportunity. You can't determine what the weather will be that day, whether it will rain or rain the night before or anything. So I don't know how much validity it will have, because it will take a lot of speculation and a lot of guessing and a lot of, well, normally if it's raining, that will happen or that will happen. If it's absolutely torrential and pouring down, I don't suppose the council want to go anyway. So I think it has to be careful that it is a picture that day, literally a photograph, that's all you're going to get. So I'm not really sure you're going to achieve what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Officer Rice.
Just really, Chairman, for members to consider, the application is due to be determined on or before the 26th of November. We have an extension of time period until that date. It may be wise, before we vote on the site visit, to ask the applicant going out of formal session whether or not they will be willing to agree any further extensions of time period to enable that site visit to take place, and for this case to be referred back to the committee. We're probably looking at a referral in January, possibly December, back to this meeting. But at this moment in time, we only have until the 26th of November to determine this case, unless the applicant is able to confirm otherwise. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Rice. Are you suggesting that we suspend proceedings to enable you to have that discussion?
Okay, if you could step out of formal session, you might at your discretion ask that question to the applicant.
Before we consider that, Councillor Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Kershaw, am I correct that you have video footage of the foul water? Has this been shared with Anglian Water or with other members, or can it be shared with other members? Because as Councillor Rester said, if you've got one day today, you won't see it. So if that could be shared with Anglian Water, maybe other members, then we would have a clearer picture. Would that be possible?
Yes, I do have video. I don't watch them often, but I do have the videos. But the clerk of the parish council has a large file of videos, and whether that could be part of the site visit, we could show the videos. He has them all.
Thank you. Clearly, there is an issue here, but an issue that appears peripheral to the consideration of this application. Where I'm sat, I think we will need to come out of the formal session and have that discussion. Mr. Mumford Smith is happy to do so. But Councillor Toy to speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really difficult, isn't it? We all want to protect our residents. We don't want. I happen to be substituting on this committee when it was discussed before, and it's just outrageous that we have foul water running down roads and through fields and into chalk streams. However, I do get the argument that this is already happening and it's not necessarily directly related. I think we need some assurances that we are not exacerbating the situation. I think that's the concern here. And in terms of addressing this, I don't know what the build-out time for this would be, but we must be talking, you know, by the time paperwork's done and it's built, 2 years maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing. We as a council last night committed to working with Anglian Water, to engaging with them, to bring reports to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We have the Director for Place and Climate Change here, and this is all part of climate change potentially. So I wonder if, whilst I understand the need for the site visit, I understand the concerns for the waste, but actually I also wonder if there's another way of addressing this. So firstly, I would need some assurances that it's not going to exacerbate the situation. And secondly, whilst it's not part of this committee, we need to, whether I can do that as a portfolio or whatever, show a commitment to the local people that this will be addressed. And before people move into those houses, by working with Anglian Water and discovering whether it's them or, you know, local drainage issues from highways, that these issues are resolved. Because these issues need resolving whether we build these houses or not. And that is a point that Jeff has very clearly made. But we need to protect the people that live there and be assured that it's not going to be made worse. That issue's there, and we need to address that. And as a council, we need to address that by working with the agencies. But that assurance is what people, I think, need to make that decision today. So hopefully that gives some clarity as to then whether we can decide whether we need the site visit to see it or whether we want to deal with it a separate way. I'm just giving that as a thought process because I'm finding it very difficult where to sit at this moment in time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just referring back to Hannah, you said that you're happy to work with us and looking at the wider issues. Is that
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just to be clear, and when we do an assessment of a planning application and we identify that it could cause flooding due to capacity constraints within that local network, we will ask for a planning condition. We will not just sit back and do nothing. We're very proactive in terms of planning applications. And when we do identify those constraints, we actually fund and manage that process in Anglian Water ourselves. So I just want to reiterate that if we were concerned about this site, we would have requested that barrier of protection for a planning condition. And we can't ask for betterment. So even with existing issues, like Jeff has said, we as Anglian Water cannot require a development to provide betterment. So we do fund through growth where we identify capacity constraints. If it sits out of those capacity constraints and it's surface water or other reasons, then we, like we're suggesting to do now, then we'll work outside of the planning realm and we'll work together to understand the bigger picture. So absolutely, we're committed to doing that. We can come and give training to members, and then we can organise other things, and we can discuss what else you may require or wish.
Thank you. Officer Lyons.
If it will help reassure the committee, we haven't listed it in the suggested conditions. I'm not necessarily advocating adding loads more planning conditions because there's a lot already. But if concerns about making sure the foul network is adequate that's being proposed by the development, one option would be to have a condition to agree that final foul drainage scheme that we can have a conversation with Anglian Water about to make sure they're happy with that, to get sign off on the final details. If that will give you assurances or a bit more certainty that the final design, we've got that final say so on that scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Davies, you already had one go, but
I'll be very quick, Mr. Chairman, because I think, first of all, once again, it would have been handy to have had a little bit of this somewhat grisly video for us to have a look at, or CCTV. The fact that the parish council one here now increases ramifications for their turning in, because it would have been helpful for them to have supplied it beforehand. And I do think that Anglian Water could have helped a little bit by having 20 seconds, 30 seconds where it is for us to have a look. Because at the end of the day, all this has come about is because we can't see the damage, the potential damage and where it's coming from, which is why the site visit proposals come forward, because we as a council and members want clarity. So I come back to your original suggestion. Maybe we should go into a private session or an ad hoc session here to try and get some clarity, because we've got to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think following Officer Rowson's proposal that we will suspend the formal session for a total of 5 to 10 minutes to enable some discussion to take place with the applicant as to whether the offer a site visit would be acceptable in terms of a further extension of time and consideration of the application. So we're formally suspended for a maximum of 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry, Paul. Chairman, can I just clarify with Noel, do we need to move or have a proposal to move to exclude the press and the public? Or can this discussion take place outside of the chamber?
The meeting itself is being suspended. If the meeting were to continue with a necessity to exclude, then there would be a need for the motion, but the meeting itself is being suspended. Officer Nelson wants to.
I'm willing to take opinion. I'm sorry, I've been slightly misunderstood. My suggestion, Chairman, was that you simply suspend debate and you go into open session now and you ask the applicant that precise question. Are they willing to agree an extension of time? Yes or no? Enable the matter to be taken to, say, the December or January committee after any site visit.
Thank you for that guidance. We shall therefore formally ask that question of the applicant. Are you willing to accept a further extension of time to take forward to December, January, to enable further investigations to take place?
Mr. Chairman, can we have a microphone? I find it very difficult to hear the applicant.
Yeah.
Thank you. So at the July committee, I just cautioned that this technically challenging proposal has taken quite a lot of time to get to this stage, and we were at risk of losing control of the site. We have negotiated a 6-month extension to our option agreement, and when you work the timescales back, we really would need a decision notice to have been issued by kind of Christmas time, really. So we could agree to an extension of time to allow this to be considered at the December committee, but beyond that, we would need a decision. So it's almost a question back. If it's not determined in December, does it automatically default to refusal, or we would have to move forward on a decision either way.
Thank you. Officer Rose, is it feasible to arrange a site visit and an updated report in time for the December meeting?
I would be looking at my colleagues in Democratic Services, but I suspect all things are possible given the needs. It's a question of finding the dates in members' diaries, and our committee for December, Jeff, is that the 18th? Am I getting my 16th of December?
Yeah, 16th of December.
So we would have a site visit, Matt, that would be effectively the week before, wouldn't we? And obviously that would need to be arranged and to be COVID compliant as well for members' safety and security and other attendees. But I think we're in with the racing chance of getting that site visit together and getting the item back. But it will be tight, Chairman, particularly if any amendments are needed to the proposals. That probably means that would be impossible. But logistically, yes, site visit can be undertaken and we can put the item on the.
We're still not in formal sessions.
If I can make a suggestion that we combine the site visit with meeting the parish council in the village hall, and then they could show the videos. So depending on the weather, we could actually see some evidence, and if Anglia Water were there as well. And it may be that the procedures to report weren't familiar with the village. And I think if we're looking to work better with Anglia Water going forward, I think that will be for the benefit of this application, and it will be for the benefit of a closer relationship. So if I could make that suggestion, thank you.
Chairman, I understand and respect the committee's views on this issue, but it's very important that we're bound by our standing orders in terms of what members' site visits on development committee items are about. So the development committee site visit must be closely drawn by the parameters of the members' concerns from this meeting, and it should be relating to the specifics of this development application. So the issues that Anglian Water may meet the parish council on outside of any site visit would be a separate matter in my view. That would be my suggestion. If Anglian Water are prepared to meet the parish council outside of the site visit itself, but the site visit should be to look at the site itself and to review that site and its physicality. So looking at those outlets, looking at the areas of concern, absolutely, completely understand that. But talking about the historic matters of flood risk and sewerage disposal, I'm afraid I would advise Chairman that I think we're going beyond the bounds of a site visit, and that would set a precedent that I would be concerned about. That's my advice, respectfully.
Could I have clarification then on what the site visit itself would actually cover? It would clearly involve looking at site and immediate environs. It presumably would not be able to include visits to the supposed outfalls into the Sifkey Brook and other areas.
Chairman, the site can engage with off-site issues. What it shouldn't be engaging with is matters of historic concerns that are raised by the parish council with Anglian Water. So if there are concerns that this site, through its connections to the network, will create problems with outfalls elsewhere in the village, then Anglian Water and our planning officers can attend that meeting and can attend and support that review. What we shouldn't do via a site visit is be drawn into matters that relate to the historic issues of foul water or surface water flooding associated with development that is already in place within the village.
Thank you. Any further? We're not actually in the formal session at the moment, so take anything.
Just to point out on the programme of meetings, we do have an extra day allowed for a meeting on the 25th of November for extra site meetings. It is already in the programme that people may have seen it. So that date might fit in if you wanted that site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
While we're not in a formal session, if I may just add.
Go ahead.
So when we met with Anglian Water, with Hannah recently, her colleague suggested that the additional effluent from the now proposed 11 dwellings into the system would be negligible. And I'm just wondering if we could just put that into context, please, Hannah.
Yes, so absolutely. So from a development of this size, we're talking about really minimal flows of 0.09 litres per second. So that's peak flow. So that's when everybody flushes their loos at once. So it's a trickle. It's not a stream of flow. It's a trickle of flow. This is a very small development, and the flow will be very minimal. And it's going back to that point. There is capacity within the network to accommodate these flows, and the network is working effectively as it was built for. And when we say the flows are negligible, they really, really are small flows. It's certainly not gushes of a flow. It's I totally appreciate the concerns, and Anglian Water, we're all about protecting the environment and our customers. And just to be clear again, if we had concerns that this development itself would cause flooding in terms of the foul network, we would have raised that. And we have gone back and done additional work to kind of triple check what we've said. And each time the result is the same. There is capacity for this development site. The existing issues, we are listening, and we will absolutely take this forward with you and work with you and with the parish. And we have actually met the parish council in the village and shown them our assets as well. And we have seen that video of the flooding, and the colour of the water that's coming out of the manhole is surface water. So this development will produce very, very small flow.
Thank you. Right.
Through you, Chairman, my suggestion was a very brief session,
Yes,
which was a single question, and respectfully to the applicant, it wasn't or shouldn't be an opportunity for the applicant to directly question speakers. That's not the way with which our committee chair.
I allowed it because I thought that.
Sorry, I'm in grave danger of stepping into your shoes. I do apologise.
Okay, suggest we now return to formal session. So do. Yes. So Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chair. Is the question surface water from the new development rather than foul water, because you've demonstrated capacity for that? So are we assured that the on-site soakaway is actually going to be adequate for any surface water that's generated from the development? And is the removal of permitted development rights. Will that take away the ability to put in patios or any other hard surface subsequent to the actual build, which might increase the surface water? And that, I mean, I don't know whether that would be something that we could explore to site visit to see actually what the landform is like and what the sort of on-site circulations would be like. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, can you respond?
Okay, in terms of the surface water drainage, that issue has been looked at. There's been a flood risk assessment produced, which is considered to be acceptable. So we've got no sort of, as officers, we have no concerns about surface water going into the ground. So that's a tick from a policy perspective. In terms of removal of permitted development rights, I'm not convinced it would have gone to that level of detail of preventing patios, because in many ways patios aren't always development. There are restrictions anyway in terms of what you can do on your front garden and permitted development rights. But clearly, the sort of corollary of that would be that that patio could then affect surface water going into the ground. So I'm not convinced we would need to go to that level of detail on permitted development rights. I don't think that's what's being proposed in the conditions. But obviously, as a committee, if you wanted to extend that further, you could obviously decide to take that view in this case if this was considered to be an important issue to enable you to approve the application.
Okay. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We seem to have two completely separate issues here. Historically, in most villages, there are all sorts of unknown connections, whether they might be sewage or fresh water into all sorts of ditches and streams. And this water can find its way into various water courses. It seems to me that the Anglia Water are saying that their pipe work has no issues with flows, with what they know to be going into the system. If this is a historical situation, this development and what has gone on in the past are completely separate. And what we probably all want to know is whether somebody is going to actually take this on and sort this out for Hindringham, and who should be doing that. Can we lead it? Can Anglia Water lead it? Can the Water Authority lead it? And that's what we need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Everybody's had their say now. We have a proposal from Councillor Kershaw, seconded by Councillor Brown, to defer consideration for site visit to take place. The applicant is happy that if we can do that, he will accept an extension of time to the December meeting, and we are clear that we can do that beforehand. I would remind you that we have a paper before us which clearly says there is no issue arising from development that will worsen any pre-existing situation. We cannot consider the pre-existing situation to have, in my view, I'm sure Mr. will confirm that we cannot give great weight to pre-existing situation that is not adversely affected by the development. So I would ask you to bear that in mind when voting on the proposed deferral. Thank you. Could we have a roll call for this matter?
Yep, no problem. Okay, so on the
proposal is to defer consideration to enable a site visit to take place. We don't have a date. I believe you suggested 25th is already in the diaries.
Jeff's just suggesting it'd be the 9th. Yep. They said before, it's like they need a decision before Christmas, essentially.
could you remind us what the date of our December meeting is?
So for you, Chair, the next Development Committee meeting is the 16th of December, but we have a provisional date allocated for a site visit, which is on the Thursday the 9th, for the week before. We would already have our report drafted and printed for the 16th of December at that stage. It would be just a matter of reporting any verbal updates following that site visit if necessary. Yeah, those are the dates. I mean, if we need other dates earlier than that for a site visit, obviously we can look at that. But so yeah, those are the dates that we have in the diaries already.
Just so I do have a site visit that morning already in Stalham. Happy to do it.
Oh, why don't they better teleport? Okay. So a date can be arranged then. 9th has been suggested, as has the 25th. I'm sure we can arrange for one or the other.
Yep. Okay, if we're moving to the vote then on that basis, Councillor Brown? Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Rest? Councillor Toy? Councillor Heinrich?
Against.
Councillor Holiday?
Against.
Councillor Kershaw?
For.
Councillor Lloyd?
Against.
Councillor Mancini Boyle? Councillor Pearce?
I think I've got to go against. Thank you.
Councillor Withington?
For.
So that's 4 for and 7 against.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that brings us then back to consideration of the substantive. Does anybody wish to add to? That's the rest.
Thank you, Chairman.
Keep going, you have 11 o'clock coffee.
I know, I won't be long. It's just for a little bit of clarification if possible. Now, I understand Anglia Water have done some CCTV review of the site and the pipes, etc., etc. My question is, A, has anybody else apart from Anglia Water seen the results? If so, has the developer seen the result? If they have, the developer, if they're comfortable with it, are going to be the ones responsible once the site has been built, if there are any problems. Can I just sort of clarify, or is Anglia Water the only ones that have actually seen their own CCTV? Thank you.
Sorry, is that for me to answer? I don't want to just. So we haven't shared the CCTV survey with anyone, but we certainly don't share it with the developer. It didn't come at a request or for the developer. It actually came from the parish council, who we then met, and we carried out the CCTV survey. We haven't shared that with anyone purely because of the way that we keep those files. It's not something that we do share externally. What I can say to you, it's part of our operational and maintenance plan that when we find defects, they have to be fixed, and that we, as I said, we did find some defects and we did fix them. So we haven't shared that, and it's certainly not something we would have shared privately with the developer. And in terms of the responsibility of the network, once that development's been built, if the developer gives it to Anglian Water, the on-site network for us to look after, that falls within our maintenance program. So it's for us to then take that on and look after it and maintain it, as we do with all the rest of our network. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, I think what third?
We're talking, yeah, but we're talking now not about the site visit. We're now talking about the application. Am I not correct, Mr. Chairman?
You are correct.
So now,
yeah, I will give you.
I'm now coming on to the.
Go on the original.
No, I'm now coming on to the application. The site visit's been done and dealt with. So I look at the overall application. Very concerned, obviously, for the S106 agreements, because we all know how troublesome, irksome and difficult they are to be. So I have been. So I think the 4-month gang bar, as I'll call it that, to say it's going to work or it's not going to work. I would like to see this go ahead. And obviously the residual water issue has got to be looked at and taken into account in the future, I think, because I think it's going to be a running issue. All I'm going to say is there's a lot of conditions here. And I myself within my ward, and I'm sure other members have had it, when we go into building for low cost rented, social, whatever you want to call it, when conditions are set, and we've got one coming up, the housing association then decides they can't do this, they can't do that. So how concrete is these conditions? Because you know, I am getting a little tired of wanting to see low cost accommodation for rented local people. We go ahead, we make a decision on the conditions, and then the housing association comes along and says, we don't want to do this, we can't do this, we can't do that. And that causes another meeting, more amendments to the plans, etc. So how concrete are these conditions to the housing association that this will be done, the landscaping will be done, etc., etc. And the other thing is this, you know, we all want housing for local people. There's going to be 2 or 3 houses or a small percentage for housing for market properties. I'm sure the housing association could offer these to local people rather than second homeowners. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pick up into order that you should generally raise the issue. I'll start with the section 106 obligation. Actually, we are pretty substantially drafted on that document. So as soon as we get a positive recommendation and a decision, that section 106 is pretty much ready, waiting for people to sign the document. So unlike a lot of cases, we're advanced on that one. It's a very simple legal agreement. It's not found in complex issues. In terms of conditions, I mean, to give the applicant credit, they've actually submitted a lot of detail up front. And these conditions are about making sure that those details are implemented in the permission. So it's not a case where we're asking for lots of information to discharge it. We're just making sure they're carried out as submitted. I mean, yes, it does happen. There are things that happen on the ground that you get out to site and you start to realize actually you can't do exactly what you said you were going to do. But we can't take a view on this application that they might do something. Obviously, we have to take the scheme as submitted. If issues do arise, we'll obviously work with the applicant to get through them. The main thing is about getting the decision issued and working with the applicant to make sure we can deliver the promises that they've made in this application. I know why you're asking it, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
I'm going to speak in favour of this application this morning. I've heard the debate regarding drainage, and actually I just feel that in terms of pure planning terms, we don't have a lot of grounds to challenge what Anglia Water are saying. They are the statutory consultee and they have been good enough to do some work. I'd also like to thank the developer because they've tried to work with us and adjusted the plans accordingly. This particular development ticks a lot of boxes from me in terms of the climate emergency, with air source heat pumps and energy efficiency, looking at the sustainable way to deal with the surface water runoff. So I like it. I would just like to say newts are not reptiles, I don't think, when I was at school. That's on page 7, section 6. I'm assuming that by reptiles you mean amphibians. Okay, I don't mean to make light of it. It's just, no, I'm concerned about a colleague of mine with local knowledge this morning, and I have thought about this, but I don't see a planning reason to challenge the officer's recommendation at this stage, and therefore I should be voting in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, and then unless there's anybody with a desperately, oh, sorry, Councillor Todd, I'll ask you, then we will move to the vote. Remember how this for long.
Can I just ask a question of the developer and Mr. Lyon? Do we have electric vehicle charging points as a condition?
Yeah, could you respond?
I know that sometimes developers will put the cabling in so that they can the properties can be completed by the owner of the property. So I'd just like to clarify that if I may.
Yeah, I mentioned that UK Power Networks monitored the energy usage in the village over a winter. We had asked that vehicle charging points be provided, and at the moment they look at the peak energy demand. So they'll assume that everybody comes home, plugs in their electric vehicles. All 11 properties have got an electric vehicle, and it all peaks as everybody's watching telly and cooking their dinners. And they're not looking at the kind of moderation that will be coming in. So what we found was that there isn't capacity, and we would have to provide a new electric substation on the site, which would partly impact actually on the amenity, take up more space, but just didn't seem proportionate, and I think it was going to cost an extra £50,000. On the flip side, the government has grants available, I think of £350 for when people want to fit an electric charging point, they can apply for that. And UK Power Networks then has to deal with the system. So we didn't feel it warranted sort of public money implementing at this stage. So as you alluded to, we are looking to put in the wiring so that they can be accommodated, but we're not putting them in because it will cost us £50,000 on top of the £350 of property.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Toy, and then we will move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be brief. Yeah, I was, as I said before, on the previous time this came to the committee, I'm pleased to see the site with the reduction of one property. That has made it a much more improved site with extra green spaces. I think it's bringing all the things we want. So I would be happy to second if it needs a seconder. However, whether it's part of this committee or not, as a portfolio holder for planning, I see this happening not only here, but other places where people have concerns with issues already. And I'm happy to take that up on behalf of the council and our local residents who have these issues that are already going on, not just with this application, to see if we can try and address these issues and understand them better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I have Councillor Lloyd down as proposing, is that correct? And Councillor Toy and seconding. The motion, the recommendation rather, is to approve subject to the 106 under section 1 of the recommendation and the very long list of conditions, and part 2 regarding the what happens if the SS 106 is not agreed. Usual roll call, and thank you for taking a really detailed debate on this. We've spent a good 2 hours plus on this one, more than one might normally expect. Yeah, before we do so, Officer Lyons just wants to confirm something on conditions.
I want to check to make sure I'm understanding fully what the proposition is. So we've got the list of 21 conditions there. There's also debate about confirming the foul sewage, just the scheme, the final foul sewage scheme. Is that something you were looking to include in that? I just want to make sure I'm. Okay. And there were discussions about sort of the PD rights as well. I mean, we weren't necessarily looking to remove hard standings, but I don't want to be too onerous. But if that was a genuine concern to the committee, then now is the time to have that included. But okay. Thank you, that's clarified, thank you.
Okay. So with that additional condition, we're happy to proceed. There's nobody going to object to that additional condition. Okay. That can be included, Jeff. We'll
Okay, yeah.
go to the vote.
Councillor Brown,
On the basis of the assurances given by Yorkshire Water and the additional condition, I will vote for.
Councillor Fisher,
For.
Councillor Rest, Councillor Toy,
For.
Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday,
For.
Councillor Kershaw,
Against.
Councillor Lloyd,
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle,
Good development. For.
Councillor Pearce,
For.
Councillor Withington,
For.
yeah, that's 10 in favour and 1 against.
Thank you. The application is approved. We shall then, given the time, move on to the next item. Item 9, Development Management Performance Update. Sir Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman and members. Looking at this month's report on performance, I think you can see that there's continued positive movement and continued improvement across the development management and majors teams. You can see that we're providing improved speeds of decision, that our appeal determinations in terms of qualitative decision making remain solid. We've had quite a long debate this morning. We normally take quite a lot of questions here, so rather than hear a great regale from me, I'm going to suggest that I close this point and take this report largely as read, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Just comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, just to say thank you for the increased improvements. We're seeing it coming along. We're seeing satisfied customers, and it's great work. And I know it's hard work with the shortage of people that are within, well, not just planning, but certainly in our case, that's where we're focused. And it's great work. And thank you to the officers for the work they're putting in to correct where we were and to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly second that. The officers have put in immense amount of work to get us back on an even keel. We all know the issues that arose from all the COVID lockdowns and everything else, as well as the ongoing staff shortages, not just in our department, but in most planning departments across the country. So, thank you.
Again, Chairman, we'll take the items as they arrive. So you've got new appeals coming out. We've got one case at Sculthorpe there, which is for a single detached dwelling with parking. And we've got inquiries and hearings in progress where we normally have more engagement. Members, I can update you that the Bristol case has been approved. Sorry. Wind that back in. The Bristol case has been dismissed. In dismissing the Bristol case, and this is my main reason for mentioning this, members, I need to make you aware that in that decision, the planning inspector was not convinced of the district council's 5-year housing land supply arguments. And the inspector on this case has argued that the council do not have a 5-year housing land supply. Now, as a committee, you'll be aware that that is a significant matter. It's right that I remind you of that today following this appeal decision. However, this is a very fresh decision It occurred at the end of last week, and the council are currently considering positions. We are in a situation where the council can obviously accept the inspector's findings and can revise its position and its statement, which is due to be heard by Cabinet in the very near future. We are in a situation where the council may accept that this is a single position, a statement made by a single inspector, and that we don't find that that is binding for the future position of the council over housing land supply. The council may decide that the inspector has erred technically and may decide that we wish to challenge the inspector's decision. My apologies, members, and particularly portfolio holder. This is a very fresh decision, and it is something that we as officers need to consider at some length before we can advise Cabinet, portfolio holder and Development Committee as to whether or not this has substantive implications for the District Council, either in terms of its future position on housing land supply or indeed in terms of our report, which is due to be heard by Cabinet shortly. Happy to take questions on Bristol, Chair.
Just brief from Mr. Chairman, yeah, this follows on from the contrary position of the inspector in the decision at Beresford Road Holt, where we were within our 5-year land supply requirements. So I would urge that we do look very, very carefully at this decision, and if there is any prospect of challenging it, then we should certainly do so. Thank you.
Officer Howson, through the chair. Thank you for letting us know this. I mean, it wasn't so long ago. We, you know, as you rightly said, we were told we had 5.2, whatever it was, years land supply. And also the fact that you mentioned that it could just be a singular or personal view. My colleague across the way sort of said, and I concur, that we should look urgently at this. I mean, we are a responsible council. We do look at the situations regards development. That 5-year land supply is something that I've come to regard as sacrosanct, even though, as I say, I'm in my second term of being a councillor. It does concern me and concerns me greatly, but I thank you for your candid notification and the options placed before us. So thank you, Philip.
Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Philip, when you say the inspector with the land supply, would your opinion be that he's looking at that one area, or is he looking at the whole district when he's referring to the land supply?
That's probably the most straightforward answer I can give anybody today. It's the District Council's land supply. It's across the wider district. So it's a housing land supply for the entire district. It was a case that actually related to residential static caravans, mobile homes. So it wasn't a case that related to mainstream housing. The inspector's decision towards a position where the District Council are reporting on the basis of an annual report, and the decision-making questions the annual reporting. It talks about the speed and repetition of reporting on housing land supply. So there are a number of issues for us to pick up here, Chairman, members, that are multifaceted. And it's not something that we can pick up from the decision on Friday afternoon and have a clear answer for you today. And my advice today and the advice to our officers is we continue until advised otherwise to promote that this council has a 5-year housing land supply. I'm reporting on a specific decision today, and that decision obviously will be reviewed and we will take that forward. I should also add, Chairman, that councils without a 5-year housing land supply are able to make decisions on sustainability under the MPPF. It is not a busted flush, members. We still have the ability to consider matters of sustainability appropriately and those policies that otherwise comply with the MPPF. It is not the end of the world if we don't have a 5-year supply, but it's clearly something, members, that we will consider very, very robustly before any final position is adopted, and you will be engaged.
Thank you. Any further comments on the land supply? Have we had any further progress with Arcady?
I was just coming on to that, Chairman. My screen's closed down, but thank you for the reminder. Yes, we have. The director and I held a meeting with the owners and the agents representing them. We have a current application which is for variation of the scheme at Arcady, which is standing as it was submitted way back in the spring of this year. I am advising that the council would be accepting of the receipt of revised plans, and will reconsult on those revised plans when those plans are received. So we await those revised plans for that application and will consult and report to this committee. I await the view from the applicant as to whether or not they will submit revised plans, but I will report to ward member and keep everyone updated as best I can on that position. You will also be aware as members that we've had a new application for Arcady, which seeks through a technical position, section 73 of the Planning Act, to substitute approved drawings for the appeal decision at Arcady. And that application is also live. Site notices have been posted. The residents of Cly are welcome to give their comments on those issues. I'm happy to brief more broadly on Arcady, but essentially we need to determine those applications before we can move forward with the hearing. So we will be writing to the Planning Inspectorate and we will be advising them of that current position, but that's our latest update on Arcady. I have nothing more to add on the other.
Okay. So, written representations there. Do you have any comment on the results of the bill decisions?
Just really, Chairman, I think at the moment what we're seeing is a trend where the District Council is largely supported in its decision making, but a matter that the Director and officers have noted in these decision making processes from the Planning Inspectorate that we are being challenged. You'll see that there are cases where we've had a situation for the creation of 2 dwellings in the open countryside, where the decision went against the council's case, where our arguments on sustainability were challenged. I believe, Chairman, we are in an environment where decision making from PINS is moving more in a reflective manner over the revised MPPF and is delivering situations where our interpretation of sustainability is going to be challenged. I believe we're in a firm position because we have an outstandingly good appeal record, so that our quality of decision making is not going to necessarily be challenged by robust decisions here. But we need to make sure that the decisions we're making in this committee and as a planning authority are in tune with the positions that are being adopted by the Planning Inspectorate. So we will be reviewing those decisions on matters of sustainability for dwellings on or around our settlements that are otherwise considered to be sustainable. It's a difficult science, Chairman, and it's something that will be coming to us through the emerging plan when our policy changes to permit development which is adjacent to existing development limits. So watch this space.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Comments? No. Okay. Thank you for that. I think that brings us pretty much to a close. Nothing that requires us to exclude the press and public, and no private business. So, thank you. We finish 1 minute to 11.